Good morning, friends. Happy Monday. Here's your Monday Minute. Today I have Kathleen here with us, and Kathleen is a marriage and family therapist here at Mayfield. And I really wanted to invite Kathleen to kind of pick up the conversation that Mark and I had left off with about attachment. And Kathleen works with attachment a lot, especially as she works with couples and families and things like that. And so I just kind of wanted Kathleen to share her knowledge around what our attachment looks like within relationships. So Kathleen, what can you share with us about what attachment looks like in our relationships?
So I think that attachment is sort of central to really all of life, especially relationship. Mm-hmm. And I think that Mark talked with you already about the styles of attachment. There's anxious attachment, and there's avoidant attachment, and there's secure attachment, of course. Mm-hmm. And I work with couples a lot and families. And so what I see is that everybody has a style. Yeah. We when we're young, we have these primary attachment relationships, and we come up with strategies to deal with deficits in those. Sure. And some of us tend toward clinginess, anxiety, reaching, and some of us tend toward kind of closing ourselves off to the need. Yeah. And whatever strategies we learn when we're little, that becomes a habitual pattern. Yeah. And so we tend to see in ourselves, we can see it in our marriages, sometimes in our friendships, but more so the more intimate a relationship is, the more we see those attachment tendencies.
Absolutely. And I think it's so interesting when you really think about the concept of relationships. You know, we aren't going to necessarily be with somebody who has a similar attachment style to us. And so that can create a ton of rub or friction in our relationships as, you know, I'm trying to push in and connect and feel that attachment with my husband, but he might be like walls up and out because of that same self-preservation because of his type of attachment. And so what are some ways, have you talked with people and have you kind of noticed what are ways for people to recognize that in themselves? Are there any particular things for people to notice or look for?
Sure. Well, you were right in what you were just describing. That's just the pattern that we all fall into in our relationships. And sometimes those are effective patterns and sometimes not so effective. And so the way that you notice is when things are hard, you know? Yep. So if you feel yourself reaching for your husband and he's kind of like distant, or he just isn't receptive, he's not responsive to that reach, that's going to touch something kind of like fearful in you. You may not be able to identify it as fear right in the moment, but it touches on that deeply. And so what do you tend to do? Reach more.
Push in further.
Right? Push in further. Sometimes that turns into criticism. So you're reaching, but you're doing something that's going to push him away even further. And then the cycle just continues.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating because I think, at least for me personally, I think about reaching in a really positive way, you know? And so you bring up the point of sometimes our reaching, our pressing in, our desire for attachment can still actually come across in a way that we might not want it to, or in a dysfunctional way and things like that. And so,
well, the worst thing that can happen for a baby or an adult, this is like cradle to grave, is non-response. Yeah. So you think, well, I'm reaching, I'm being positive, and if you don't get something back, then you get frantic, and then you start doing things that don't feel so positive, even though the intent is still the same.
Sure. Yeah, you can become a little more aggressive or a little more freaked out by that. That's so interesting. Okay, so one of the biggest things that I really want to challenge you guys and kind of follow this conversation up with is the idea of, can we start to recognize our own attachment styles, and can we recognize how those are engaging with somebody else's attachment styles, whether it's a friend, you said some of our friendships we can see that in, or a significant other in our lives. And if you don't have a significant other in your life and you don't notice it in your friendships, then start looking back to your parents and your siblings, because I know that's kind of that foundational place for us. But can you notice it, and can you see how it engages with other people, which can be pretty tricky, like we were talking about, because sometimes our behaviors aren't necessarily what we think they're doing. If I'm, reaching out to my husband but being critical, that doesn't make me on the surface think about, I want to attach to him. But ultimately at the core, that's kind of what that's talking about. So another question that I kind of want to pose is, are we stuck being in the attachment style that we've been given? Are we kind of a victim of what we start with?
Well, if we are, then I'm out of a job. But no, 100% we can change. And one basic, going kind of back to what you were saying a second ago, one basic way that you can say, which way do I tend to go with my need for reaching, need for closeness?
Yeah.
When I'm under distress or when I'm fearful, do I tend to get anxious and like I need to call somebody or I need reassurance from someone? Or do I tend to just kind of not go there in my mind, shut it off because it's too distressing?
Yeah.
So that can kind of tell you which direction you tend to go as a person. Am I an island? Do I feel needy?
Sure.
Not that needy is bad, we're all needy. But if you have that power to even wonder, wow, I wonder if do I have secure attachment with people? Am I insecure with my attachment to people? Right there is the power of self-reflection.
Yeah.
And that's all we need to be able to change. So if you can do that, you can change, because all it is learning more effective ways to get your needs met and to maintain close connection with a significant other.
I love that. I love that because sometimes self-reflection can feel like so much work, but ultimately it empowers us so significantly to shift our circumstances and our relationships and our behaviors. And we can find freedom and we can find health and we can find really fulfilling relationships. And so it gives me a ton of hope. You know, if I have the power to self-reflect, I have the power to become more wholehearted.
Absolutely. And connected.
Yeah.
And that's what we all want.
Absolutely.
We're wired for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, there's one more thing we wanted to talk about, and I'm just going to pass it off to you.
Okay.
Jump in.
So in our community, we have a lot of adoptive and foster families. Yeah. I myself am adopted, and so I work with families. I know it from the inside out. I have kids who are adopted. I have birth kids. I have clients, all of it. And so the reason we bring this up is because when you're adopted, it doesn't matter if you're adopted at birth or you're adopted at age 10 or later, there's a break. There's an original attachment break because a baby is 9 months inside the body of its mother, and it gets to know her sounds and the feel of her, and then that's gone. And sometimes that adoption break can be a setup for extra vulnerability to attachment issues for your whole life. Yeah. Especially depending on the circumstances of it. And so, but that's not to say that all adopted people are doomed to have attachment issues at all. We all have the same need for connection. And so if you are adopted, if you have an adopted child, connection is even more paramount to pay attention to and be intentional with. Probably is the main point. So more than rules, more than doing all the things, you need to be the right parent or whatever, is connecting with your child and letting them know they are safe. They have a committed other who is there to take care of them.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so valuable. And we really just wanted to touch on that. I feel like we could do a whole other episode on this topic alone, but we just felt that it was valuable to touch on that there are some more complexities when it comes to attachment styles, and that it's not always as simple as, what's your attachment style? How do I become more healthy?
True, and that's also another point, is there is reactive attachment disorder, where the attachment rupture is significant enough that it's causing major problems in a person's life, a family's life, and it is really important to get some help from somebody who is specialized in that.
Yeah, well trained.
Yeah,
for sure.
Right.
Absolutely. Cool. Okay, friends, this week I want you, kind of what I said before, See if you can recognize what's going on inside of you. See if you can notice patterns of ways that you interact with people in your life that might speak to the type of attachment that you have. See if you can even notice what are my needs that would help me feel more securely and safely attached to a person that I want to be attached to. See what you recognize inside of yourselves, and see if you can speak some of those needs to that person in your life. So, friends, get yourselves to Friday, enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.